Good morning, folks. It's pretty much the middle of the night. Little after midnight. 12:22. It is cold. What's going on out there with this global warming? Welcome to the Dr. Kent Show. My other channel, Waking Israel, is still hobbled at the moment. I'll try to upload to that again today. YouTube does not communicate very well with me. They don't have hardly any regard for me. They seem to respond to other folks, but they really don't like me, or I guess I'm just, insignificant. Probably just a gnat in their eyes, a little ant. This is show letter F. I kept trying to come up with things, and I kept coming up with, fix it, facts, face the facts. The fact is, there's not much truth in the world. And there was a law, a command I pulled for in reading the NIV study Bible. And that made so much sense. And it was like it jumped off the page at me. And it kept coming off the pages at me throughout that whole Bible. Well, not everywhere, but enough times that I noticed it, like a half a dozen times. Love, truth, and justice. The problem is, you got to have the facts. You have to have the proper perspective. You have to know truth first. It's preeminent. Why is truth preeminent? Because without it, you cannot render justice. All you can do is take guesses, wild guesses, and get it wrong. I guess what F should stand for today, now that I'm talking to you, is fraud. We live in the land of frauds. One fraud after another. Perpetual frauds. We have one error and we compound it. We build another error. And we've done that in this nation to the point where we've got ourselves really screwed up. For instance, the money is a fraud. We gave that to the Rothschilds, and they took over the whole country. They own the world at this point. That's the way it is. They own you and me. From what I understand, they take our birth certificates. Now think about this. Birth certificates. We spell that B-I-R-T-H. Yet, have you heard of birth, B-E-R-T-H? Meaning a ship at birth? So our language has got this duality in the language. And that occurred, according to the Bible, in Babylon at the Tower of Babel. And the idea was that Yahweh came down with the other Elohim and confused the people's language and scattered them, split them up. The idea was the men were united, they spoke one language, they had one mind, they were going to build a tower. They wanted to become God, which is kind of like the old story of Satan wanting to ascend on high above and wanted to play God. And as the story went, he destroyed the tower, scattered the people, confused them, and changed the languages so they couldn't talk to one another. Babel. Babblers. Babbling. So we are living in a land of frauds. We believe that we're the freest people on earth, and we aren't free. We don't have an honest money. We have no real currency. Everybody fights and kills over that fiat currency, that paper stuff, the stuff they put numbers on in the computers add zeros to it. They inflate it. They borrow it into existence, and we have to pay interest on it, and the interest doesn't exist. So it's got to come from somewhere. That extra money has to come, that extra fiat, extra numbers, they have to come from somewhere. And so we end up in a perpetual cycle of debt and bankruptcy. And it is a horrible system for the average man. And the average man just won't understand it, refuses to understand it. I think at this point people are waking up and realizing that there's no money. And what happened was the Speaker of the House decided to go along with this fraud because they promised to make him Secretary of State. He did become Secretary of State. He got the deal. But he was really, really not happy with the trade that he made. He certainly made a deal with the devil. And the devil is in the details. And they forced that through us. Colonel Mandel House, who wasn't a colonel at all, another fraud, he handled Woodrow Wilson, got him elected. He came up with the techniques for winning elections back then. I don't remember exactly what it was. He also wrote a book. He thought he was a real genius of a guy. He thought he should dominate and rule the world. And he wanted to have it all ruled by a bureaucracy. He was a dictator, a bureaucratic dictator. And he wrote basically the blueprint. It was a horrible book. I bought it and read it. It was written at such a low level, I couldn't believe it. This guy who writes this crappy stuff, I don't even think it was at a junior high school level. He writes this stuff, and he actually takes it over. His plan came to fruition with the New Deal in the future. These guys laid this stuff out for the country quite a while ago, just like they laid this next war out. They're going to go full-blown with this. Why? Because they have to. They have to waste our substance, and they have to grow theirs, so they make more money. But more importantly, it keeps us from taking them on and taking them down. So that's why they have to put us at each other's throats. And this war of Russia's invasion, that's an act of self-defense. As Putin said, it's an existential threat to Russia. And apparently we have built, our State Department has got biological weapons labs all along that country, especially on the border with Russia. Lord knows what we're making there. Probably that snake poison that's been going around. You remember those guys who used to deal in potions and stuff? Those shysters that would probably run around the Old West claiming they had an ointment for this, an ointment for that, and they would con people. It's just at a bigger scale. That's all it is. I want to go to the Tower of Babel in the Bible. It's in the book of Genesis, I'm pretty sure. And I don't remember what chapter it's in. So it's going to take me a little bit to find this. So hold on with me. Why do you want to read the Bible? The Bible is the basis, the foundation for all of Western civilization, which is under attack. Even if you do not want to believe a religion comes from this, or you don't want to follow that, it's worth reading. It's worth reading because of the stories and to understand what has happened and to understand the foundations and to be able to be less deceived. Not to avoid it entirely, mind you, but to be less deceived. Well, I've got myself open to Genesis 10. Genesis 10 introduces us to Nimrod, a mighty hunter. And it says here, before Yahweh, which also means against, opposition, or in front of, a mighty hunter in front of the Lord, Yahweh. What did Nimrod hunt? He hunted men. He killed men. Ever hear of cannibal? Canaan? Baal, their god? He was a cannibal. He liked to hunt men and he killed them. What ended up happening to Nimrod? This is kind of in the Bible and kind of not in the Bible. Nimrod was murdered by Esau. And Esau, as a result of hunting down Nimrod, was chased by Nimrod's bodyguards for 3 days and 3 nights, wasn't able to eat or sleep. These guys were intent on catching him and killing him. And he shows up back at the house, back at the tent, back at home, and his brother Jacob, who's basically a dweller of tents. In other words, he's his mama's boy and he stays at home. And he likes to do housekeeping, if you will. And he's a good cook. And he's cooking up lentils, if you will. Red lentils. He's cooking up this porridge, red porridge. I guess it's pretty spicy and it tastes good. And here comes his brother, twin brother that come out before him, I believe. Famished, hasn't eaten in 3 days. Very, very close to death. I mean, he's been scared for his life. Hasn't been able to rest. You can imagine how frazzled the man is. So what had he done? He had hunted down Nimrod and killed Nimrod. He murdered Nimrod. Now, Esau was a hunter. He would go out and hunt venison, hunt animals. But for some reason, he wanted to go after Nimrod. We've got a good guess in here, though. And this is wild-ass stuff. This is out there a little bit, I have to admit. We come to a story about a fellow who commits a sin a little further in the Bible called Achan. And Achan basically rebelled against, I think it was against Joshua. He rebelled against the authority, and he committed a couple of crimes. He had found a Babylonian garment and a wedge of gold, I believe it was. It was like a kilogram of gold, and he hid those in his tent. He put the wedge of gold under the floor of his tent, and I don't know exactly where the garment was from Babylon, but he hid that also. The word is that garment, that Babylonian garment, came from this event where Esau chased down Nimrod, hunted him down and killed him. Why? He wanted the clothes. He wanted that Babylonian garment. It turns out that what the claim is that the Babylonian garment was the skin that Yahweh made for Adam. Remember the story that, and I don't find this quite in the Bible, to be honest with you, but it's implied, so it's out there a little bit too. But basically, once the man and the woman, once Adam and Eve realized they were naked, and mentioned it to Yahweh, Yahweh gave them clothes. And the story was that there was no death in the Garden of Eden. Now, this is a fairy tale. I don't find any evidence for it. And that in order to clothe the man and the woman, Yahweh had to kill some animals and take their skins, their hides, and fabricate clothes for the two of them. And it goes a little further than that. Supposedly, Adam became invisible when he wore these special clothes. Well, if you think about it, you don't see his naked body, so I guess that's invisible. It's interesting how one can get into this and assemble it. So basically, Esau was trying to reclaim the lost garments of Adam. And this supposedly had magical properties. He would it would make him invisible. It was camouflage. He would disappear, and other people couldn't see him, and he could go hunting them. We think that's the Babylonian garment that Achan found. And that's one of the main 3 sins mentioned throughout the Bible. The number one thing that was the first thing that happened in the history of the Bible, and that was the seductive ways of Balaam. It was a sexual sin, if you will. And Balaam did his best to turn them into a bunch of sex fiends. Sounds like that's what they do today, too. Anyway, the clothing that Nimrod got, we don't know where he got it from exactly, but we do know that just before that, Canaan is cursed. Canaan is cursed because his father, Ham, does something, and we don't know exactly what it is. Uncovered the nakedness of his father, which we did some brainstorming one time outside the church, and we talked for a long time about this. We were having a real good time because we were all open-minded. We weren't one insisting our way was the right way. We just entertained these wild ideas. Anyway, Canaan did something and saw his father in his nakedness, but we do think what he did is that Noah they had been around after the flood long enough to actually make wine, and Noah was doing some sort of a ceremony involving wine and drinking, and he got drunk and passed out. And we either think that Ham did some mischief to him, or perhaps stole the clothes, or took them while they were off him, or took the clothes off of him. But apparently, while Noah was doing this ceremony, he was dressed in Adam's clothes, those original skins, I guess, that Yahweh made. Those are fables almost, because they're not quite in the Bible. I don't find them, but they taught them when I was a boy in Sunday school a long time ago. They teach a lot in Sunday school that's not true. Nimrod, the mighty. There's also a story that Nimrod went up to the Tower of Babel. Maybe it was Nimrod, maybe it was another, and decided to show the people there was no God. So he went up and challenged God from the tower, telling him, in front of the people, if you're there, come down and strike me with lightning or something like that. And then he actually went as far as to take a bow and an arrow and to shoot the arrows up in the air as if he was shooting at God. And there was something about that as well. So there's other myths to be done, and I think there's some sort of knowledge that gets passed in these things. We don't know exactly what Ham did to his father Noah, but we know that his two brothers got very upset, and they walked in backwards with some clothes and put the clothes on the father so that they wouldn't see him. So we don't know exactly what happened. He might have performed a sexual act on Noah, or it could have referred to him having sex with Noah's wife, with his own mother. It's a colloquialism, if you will, and we don't quite understand that. I don't know why I bring that up to you today, but I guess what I'm trying to tell you is that we've got stories, and we have assumptions. We have phony money. We have what we call the rule of law, which is really not the rule of law anymore. We have statutory law rather than common law. We have interstate commercial code rather than the Constitution. We have a new jurisdiction. It's a foreign jurisdiction out of Washington, D.C., and it was only designed to rule over the 10 square miles of Washington, D.C. But for some reason, they own the rest of the country today. They don't just rule things, but they own most of the land, the patents, most of the wealth. They actually somehow take our birth certificates and have us under admiralty law. They bond our birth certificates, sell them on the open stock market, and people make money off it. And there's all kinds of Ponzi schemes behind the scenes that we don't readily know about. They came up with social insurance, which was against the law of the land, against the Constitution, in violation of it. And so in order for it to apply to us, they made us on paper, on their records, they wrote us up as all being inhabitants of the territories where they could have command over us. And so my understanding is if you go get your Social Security record, the master record, it will have you listed as being domiciled in Puerto Rico or in Guam or in the Virgin Islands, in one of our territories, and it'll give you a whole different profession. So they put that on paper. And at the same time, when they started that, they started the Resolute Trust Fund, something, Guaranteed Trust Fund. I don't remember the name exactly, but I didn't know what it was for, why it was so important that they started this. Well, that's where they put the monies at, that they hid from us, that they administer upon our behalf. And so apparently there's millions of dollars there in our names, each one of us. And so whenever anybody asks me about Social Security, my question is, would you rather get that little measly check every month, or would you rather have a few $1 million at one time? And apparently, when we become of age, we fail to claim our inheritance, claim this pot of money, this pot of gold they put in reserve for us, and somehow or other, they leech off it. So I don't understand it. I really don't. But I'm bringing it to you because it is the most confusing thing that I've ever tried to delve into. So there's some things that happen, and apparently some people have been able to unlock this stuff much earlier than I have. I remember a woman on Facebook years ago who was making claims about we needed to redeem ourselves. It's like we have to save ourselves. Well, apparently one of the methods of redemption was to buy your birth certificate back or demand it back, declare your inheritance, get access to those monies that have been held, in abeyance that you don't even know about, you don't know exist. So we're treated as dead men, as men that are cast out at sea, lost, under admiralty law. We're treated as fictitious men, straw men, as corporations, dead corporations, immature children. We're treated in a fashion that allows them to pull these frauds off on us. And they're afraid we're going to wake up and throw the yoke off. Where does this yoke come from? I just told you about Esau. Esau killed Nimrod. And when he shows up at the tent, he's famished and he's about to die. And his brother says, yeah, you can have some porridge. Sell me your inheritance. Disrespect your inheritance. I think he was the oldest. And what was the response of Esau? What good is my inheritance if I die of starvation? He made the deal. It was a bad deal. And this is where it gets to be a bit ironic. Why is it ironic? It's ironic because Jacob has actually deceived his brother, yet he's made a deal with him, an honest deal at the same time. Later, Esau declares that Jacob stole his inheritance and then stole his blessing from his father, and he decides he's going to kill Jacob. He's going to kill his brother, and their mother finds out and tells Jacob, you got to leave. You got to get out of here. As a matter of fact, why don't you go back to where we came from, back to Haran, and go see my brother Laban. Go stay with him until your brother simmers down and I sort this stuff out. So he went to Haran, he went to Laban. And that is when he gets his wives. Laban's got 2 daughters. Jacob makes a deal. Laban says, work for me for 7 years. I think that was the number. Maybe it was 10 years. Maybe it was 5. I got to read it again myself. And he agrees to do it for the younger daughter. I guess she has more open eyes. She's prettier. And the other one, the older daughter, Leah, has got weak eyes. I think the eyes were smaller, maybe more squinty or something. Maybe she had poor vision, who knows. But those are the descriptions. So he made the deal wanting Rachel, the one that appealed to him. Laban fools him, defrauds him. On the wedding night, I guess these women wore veils and were all disguised up. He sends in his oldest daughter so that Jacob does the wedding deed with Leah. And of course he wakes up in the morning and realizes he's been conned. He's been had. So he complained to Laban about it. Laban says, okay, but we don't marry the youngest daughter off. We marry the oldest daughter first. So just give her her wedding week. In other words, give her a week of the pleasure that she has coming as a bride. And then, promise me you'll work for me so many more years, and then I'll give you Rachel too. So I don't know if he had to work 7 more years and then got Rachel, or if he got her at the end of the week. But Laban has servants for each one of his daughters. And so the handmaids, if you will, go with each one of his daughters. So he ends up with 4 wives. So if you want to know, is polygamy in the Bible, is it supported? Remember that David thanked Yahweh thanked Creator Father God Yahweh for his wives and his concubines. Well, it is biblical. It is in the Bible. Am I going to advocate for that? No, because I think 1 is too many, to be honest with you. And maybe if you have 4, as the Muslims say, they at least can keep themselves busy arguing among themselves and leave the man alone so he can get his work done. In the beginning, it was not designed to be that way. That's what Joshua said later on. It was designed to be one-on-one. It was intended to be one-on-one. And that's what we have today. That's what the laws are of this nation. I've gotten carried away with the stories here a little bit. Where are we in this nation? Well, a lot of fraud's going on. There is no money. It's all been stolen. Our Congress, our politicians made certain that would happen. President Woodrow Wilson was conned. They honeypotted him. Mrs. Peck must have been quite the hottie because he compromised himself and they blackmailed him so they could get this Federal Reserve through. And by the way, the story is, and I'm telling a lot of stories today, why not? The Titanic had 3 great men on it that would have been against the Federal Reserve, the banking system. They would have been against it entirely, and it never would have come to be. So how did that happen? What happened? Well, they sank the Titanic to kill these 3 men. They killed these 3 men so they could get the Federal Reserve through. In case you're wondering, J.P. Morgan set that up. J.P. Morgan apparently had this boat built, this biggest ocean liner, unsinkable, and got all of these, put a big show on, and had all of these important men going to take the maiden voyage. And he, at the last moment, did not take the ride. He stayed off of it. Why? Because he knew it was going to be sunk. They did that very much on purpose. And there's even dispute as to whether or not it's really the Titanic that's lying at the bottom of the ocean. There apparently was another ship, a ship that had been in accidents before, and its hull, its frame had been damaged, and it was in disrepair, and I believe it was called the Olympia, or Olympus, and that it instead was sunk. Who knows? The stories are wild. And there were some subtle differences between the ships. The story also is the captain of the Titanic actually was hired to commit the crime, hired to sink that thing on purpose. And with those three men out of the way, the German bankers got their international bank, got their national bank. The Federal Reserve was set up, which has enslaved pretty much the entire world. So you had three men. I think Joseph Astor was one. I don't remember the names of the other two, but they were pretty powerful, pretty important, and they never would have allowed the Federal Reserve to come into existence because they would have known what that would have meant. And see, it's been a long, long road. This is a slower road than even the Chinese take. This isn't the Chinese doing it to us. It's just like the bug that's been going around. You all want to blame China. China didn't do it. Our own people did that to us. It's Fauci's bug. Why is that man still walking around free? Why is he not charged with this crime and tried? Why is that not going to happen? Who's really in charge of this place? Who really runs it? We do not have the rule of law. We've got rule by some horrible bunch of criminals, by the devil and the devil's children. We can take that as spiritual, and yet we should be taking it as literal. Because the Bible shows us that all of this stuff came from Cain. These are descendants of Cain. That's what we're dealing with. So the literal DNA of a fallen angel, one of the devils. And before you get all high and holy and high on the hog, whatever, and you want to go whacking people, you need to understand something. The Bible just tells you about one person, one hybrid, one ish, born from the union of a fallen angel and Eve. And the story is, and I believe this is going to be in the books of Enoch, is that there are 200 of them that were in Mount Hermon. So you got another 199 to go after. And that's just the fathers of the hybrids, the fathers of this mixed lineage with satanic DNA in it. So there really is literal and physical. Yet, if a man goes to the dark side, I guess we would call that spiritual. We would call that a spiritual son of the devil. So all of this is hidden from you in plain sight. It's all in here. The stories are in here. Some of it you have to deduce. You have to look at it and study it a bit. Some of it's in some of the extra biblical books that they would not allow in here or they took out of the Bible. And some of it is they've altered to hide their identities and hide the truth from us. It has been said that Genesis is the most heavily edited book, that it's been put in the wrong order so we wouldn't be able to discern what the stories are truly about. I'm not sure about that. I've never seen anybody produce the book of Genesis with the verses in the correct order, if there is another order that is correct. In our own country, we have what we thought was constitutional law and constitutional rule, but apparently at the foundations, we got screwed up screwed over. Ben Franklin didn't do us any favors. He got honeypotted. He participated in the Hellfire Club, which I thought was in Paris, but now I've heard it might have been in London. Well, who knows? They might have had branches everywhere. But apparently, he was a ladies' man, and they took advantage of that weakness. And when he signed the Treaty of Paris, the fellow wore two hats. Two different corporations, if you will. And in one of those, the one that everybody paid attention to, it looked like he was representing the King of England and getting our independence, getting peace. Because the King of England had already set us free by failing to defend us, which he was required to do against the French and their Indians. Because they refused to defend us, he set us free and we became independent. See, the king has obligations to his people, and one is he's got to protect them. If he fails to protect them, then he's no longer their king. He loses them. That's what happened to us. It was not a war of rebellion. We pleaded. We pleaded with him for years. Defend us. And most of the colonists were loyal to the king. They didn't want to go over to the other side. They didn't want to go independent. For one, the king had a navy. Well, we certainly didn't have a navy. We had no ships with cannon. We barely had muskets. That's where the tradition came, where we made them ourselves. And we did have rifles at the time. And muskets. Each man had both. So, quite often he'd carry several. And the reason being is that he'd be able to have them loaded up and fire one after the other. And usually they had two arms. One was a rifle. It took longer to load a rifle because of the rifling. It took more effort, more time, and you couldn't get another shot off very easily. Whereas a musket was smoothbore, everything went into it easily, and you could reload that sucker fast and shoot a lot faster. Yahweh, God does not bless rebellion. Nimrod was a rebel. The United States Revolutionary War was not a rebellion, not like the French Revolution. And by the way, the people that were behind the French Revolution are the same people that have basically taken over our nation today and run it today. They own us. They own you and me. They own all the property. They have it all. It's been done through a bunch of weird kinds of legal maneuvers. We've been blindsided terribly. So Ben Franklin signed this treaty, but the guy was also, not only was he exchequer to the King of England, he also represented the Pope. And by doing that, we ended up being incorporated under Rome. And that corporation lie fallow, at least according to the judge in Big Lake. The woman up at Big Lake, I don't know. Anna, what's your last name? Older woman, claims some sort of legal scholarship under Rome, which makes me wary of her. She claims that the corporation lay fallow until Abraham Lincoln became president of that corporation rather than the organic nation. These are things that I don't quite understand. I don't know if you can delve into those and find out, but that would be nice. Or if you already know about it, you know, little things, put it in the comments, please. Please. Do like my videos. Share these things. Support the channel. That would be very nice. Subscribe. Get one of these Bibles. Why these Bibles? Because it's more accurate, and you'll be able to get to the history better and have better understanding. You won't make a lot of the erroneous assumptions that people have made on other versions of the Bible. And you may say, well, The King James is the best version. This is the King James. However, it has been corrected. They've gone to the original books, and they've put in the proper name of Yahweh, which was not in the original King James Bible. It had been omitted a long time ago. It had been omitted back when the Septuagint was produced, about 275 BC. The Septuagint was produced, the Greek version of the Bible. It was necessary because most Israelites were no longer speaking Hebrew. Most were speaking Greek by then. By 275 BC, we're talking 3 centuries of dispersion. You see, after they went into Assyria, and there were 3 landmarks in the Bible, and after they went to Babylon, I think there were 2 places in Babylon, they left, and only the groups from Babylon, only those 2 tribes went back. The others from the northern house of Israel broke across the Caucasus mountain range, hence we're called Caucasians, into Europe and the rest of the world into uninhabited places. And that was about 650 BC when that happened. That was done about that time. And so most of the Israelites had become Hellenized. We're speaking Greek. That's why they had to produce a Septuagint. And Ptolemy II took out the name of Yahweh and put in the name God. He also took out various names for the bad, evil lords like Baal and put in the word Lord. So in other words, he obscured things by taking out the proper nouns, proper names, and putting in categorical names. Like God is a catch-all category. Your God could be Moloch. Your God could be Baal. It could be Dagon, the fish god. Those were all gods back then. And each people's had their own god that they fought for and that protected them, supposedly. And unfortunately, in the translation of the Bible, as it's been handed down, the evil ones were involved in that and obscured it for us. Now, I don't know if Ptolemy II was evil. I don't know if he was a descendant of Esau. And, if he was descendant of Edom. Esau became known as Edom. Edom means red. Once he sold his inheritance for a bowl of red porridge, his nickname was Edom. That's what he was called. And if you want to know who Esau Edom is today, you go to my blog, givingpsychologyaway.com, and you look up Who is Esau Edom Today by Charles Weissman. The entire book is in PDF form there. You can download it freely. Charles Weissman's family abandoned the copyrights when he passed away, so that it's public domain. They did not like what he wrote about. He was so far ahead of this time that he didn't have that many friends, from what I can tell. He was a depressive sort because his research, his understanding was so advanced there weren't that many people he could talk to. When he passed away, he had written a lot of books, done a lot of research, and when he passed away, his family hauled cartons of books, brand new books, to the dump. They could have sold those books. They were entitled to that inheritance, and they were entitled to the doggone copyright as well. I don't know if they can get it back. If they claimed it back, I certainly would take it down. I wouldn't put it up there. But that will help you. But you got to remember, this is only a story about a small percentage of the evil that's on the earth. Now, I've tracked these fellows down quite a bit. By reading the Bible myself, I realized that Joshua failed to kill all of those that Yahweh had ordered him to kill. And he ordered them to killed for good reason. It wasn't because he just wanted to kill people and he was being mean. It was because of their practices, who they were worshiping, what they were doing. A lot of human sacrifice, cannibalism, a lot of bad stuff, sexual stuff, a lot of stuff with children, They were doing stuff that never even entered his mind. That's mentioned in the Bible several times. Yahweh says they were doing stuff that was so bad he never thought it was possible. He never thought about it. Didn't think of it as a possibility. And so we had human sacrifice all over the planet for quite a while. I don't think that we need to reinvent the wheel. I don't think we have to come up with a better form of government. I believe we were blessed with the best form of government for us. And we just need to go back to the roots our founders gave us. How we get there, I don't know. Because the evil ones are going to fight us tooth and nail all the way. Look at what's happening with the deep state. Look at the tyranny. Look at the failure to follow the laws. Look at how one group, if you will, is lambasted and gone after for nothing. Laws are fabricated. They're framed up. I mean, the crimes they're framed on crimes that they didn't do. Yet the other group is actually guilty of them, gets away with it. So here we have a man in office who, is perfect president for this people. It's what you deserve. It's fitting. Why? Because you turned your back on Yahweh. Yeah, you read the Ten Commandments. You have to agree those are what makes us civil. Those are the basis of civilized nation, of civilization, of Western civilization. And if you don't want to abide by it and you want to ignore it and do whatever you want, then you don't get your civilization. You end up with this barbarism going on. If you don't want to come under Yahweh's reign, tutelage, under his wing, his protection, then you have all of these many laws of men that are designed to screw you up, catch you up, and turn you into slaves. These people have practiced slavery for a long time. They love it. They do their best to ruin people and to enslave them. They do it with their money magic, with their black magic, with their money system, with charging usury, interest, out of nothing. And they create the money out of nothing because this government that we have is not a constitutional government. It's a corporate government. None of these state governments are organic governments. There's a woman who ran for Congress, did not make it. Pretty brilliant. Wish she had made it. And she tells us that we need to form our own governments, ignore the ones that are there, and populate our organic governments. Because what we have is a bunch of corporations set up for profit, motivated by profit, bought off. How do you think they made all this illness and disease happen? It's because they paid off the hospitals, paid them a couple of grand for doing the test, paid them 13 grand for doing the diagnosis, giving somebody that label. And then if they intubated them, put a tube in their trachea and put them on a pressurized machine that they didn't need to be on, they got paid big bucks for that. So they got rewarded, paid to kill people. That's just one way to look at it. I don't know what you think. You put it in the comments. And the killing continues. And I know it would be nice to listen to what Trump says and call it the China virus. No, there's something else going on here. There's not even a virus from what I can tell. The virus has never been shown to exist, to be isolated. A series of frauds have been pulled on us with that stuff for sure. This medical profession has finally been exposed and has lost a lot of its credibility, which it deserves to lose. We're losing thousands of people a day. The last I estimated, it was 12,000 people a day we're losing in this war. It is a physical war. It's not just spiritual. Unfortunately, you and I are required to fight it spiritually because we're not in power. You know, power comes, as Mao Zedong said, at the end of the barrel of a gun, the smoking barrel of a gun. And as Barack Insane Hussein Obama said, they cling to their guns and their Bibles. Folks, you're doing it without your Bible. No wonder you're blind. No wonder you're deaf and dumb. No wonder you can't think clearly. No wonder you can't see straight. No wonder you're so easily deceived. No wonder you cannot stand your ground. You have no ground to stand upon. You have no constitution. You're weak. You're unhealthy. The body is sick. Your sin has made you sick. When we sin, it hurts us individually and it hurts our nation as well. A friend of mine pointed that out a while back, and he was right. So whatever it is that you and I think we're getting away with, we aren't getting away with. It all gets recorded, not just on their computers, but on the computers that we were designed to be, in which we're all connected. And they're busy doing their best to disassemble this thing and to take you out of the real system, out of connection with Creator Father Yahweh. They're doing some really bad stuff. And remember, Yahweh does not bless rebellion. Not only that, He put those people in the places they're at. Why? To sift us and to judge us, to test us. But clearly they've gone beyond their license because they're killing us at this point. It's over 12,000 a day we're losing in America alone. Why would they want to do that? Doesn't make any sense, right? I know you insist that I come up with a reason and a rationale. It's this battle between good and evil. It's the fight between these families. You know, Pastor Jerry Wiki characterized it as this, that Satan wanted to be God. He wanted to rise up high above Creator Father Yahweh. And so he come up with his own plan. And his plan was, if I marry into the family, he can't deny me. So he hooked himself up with Eve. I believe he deceived Eve, seduced Eve. Eve thought she might have been having sex with Yahweh, or who knows? I don't have good data on this. I can't make a good, clear statement for you. But apparently, what ended up happening was so bad. According to Pastor Wiki, he believes that Adam had a talk with Yahweh, his father. In case you're wondering, Adam was Yahweh's son. It's in the New Testament. Go read the Bible. It's very end of one of the chapters in the book of Luke, I believe. Adam, the son of God. Jerry says that he believes that Yahweh offered Adam another wife, and that Adam declined, saying he couldn't live without her. He loved her so much that he was going to stay with her, even though he meant he was taking on mortality, and he was going to die. He was going to stay with her. He wasn't going to abandon her. And Pastor Wiki says he believes Yahweh replied, okay, I'll make a way for you. It's going to be tough, but I'll make a way for you. And Yahshua, his whole purpose is to come back and correct that error that occurred, where Eve was basically condemned and Adam went ahead and took that condemnation upon himself. So I know you guys, a lot of people in these big box churches want to put the men against the women and the women against the men. That doesn't sound like it's very holy, does it? Doesn't sound like it's from Creator Father God, and it's not. So they got us blaming each other. They've got us divided so they can conquer us. They divide the family as best they can. Yeah. The American family was so strong, they knew they had to go after the family. They knew that we read our Bibles and we knew who we were. And they knew that they couldn't beat us unless they gave us another Bible. And they did that. I think it was 1917. 1907, 1917, 1915. They gave us the Schofield Reference Study Bible. It is a Bible that was put together by a committee of the enemy. And they used Schofield, a very unethical attorney, as a front man for their new Bible. Hence called the Schofield Reference Study Bible. He didn't do it. He didn't translate it. He didn't oversee it. He was just the front man so they could get away with publishing this thing. And it's got more footnotes and more notes, study notes, more commentary in the margins than in the Bible, in the text of the Bible. And remember this, the Bible interprets itself. You don't need footnotes. You just need to read the Bible, and it will open up to you. As a matter of fact, the Jerry Wicke preached from the Schofield Reference Study Bible, a particular version of it in large print, and those pages were falling out. He had been through that so much. And he said that he had to use that because it was the Bible of the enemy. He wanted to know what the enemy was doing. And sure as heck, he told me some things to look for in there, and they are in that particular version of the Bible that particular year, and not in the other versions. They actually showed their hand more. Why? They just gotten done killing a president. They got away with it. They could do whatever they wanted. Their plan was so complete, they figured nobody could stop them. It sure looks like they were right to me. What do you think? I mean, even Carroll Quigley was able to publish a book about them because he loved what they were doing. He had 2 volumes, but Macmillan insisted he reduce it to 1 volume. Man, I'd love to have had both volumes. He named names. He named the participants of this great, great conspiracy against mankind, against the planet, against Yahweh, Creator, Father. Remember, Yahweh doesn't bless rebellion, but he blesses self-defense. However, I guess reading the Bible is going to be an act of rebellion. At least according to the left, it's an act of rebellion. They made us take prayer out of schools. They also took away common law pleas in our courts and substituted statutory pleas in the 60s as well, in about 1964 when they took prayer out of school. They switched over to statutory law, statutory pleas, depriving the people of their rights. There is no money, there's no constitution, there's no rights. It's all lip service. You're no longer citizens, you're no longer Americans, you are now citizens of a corporation, or rather a series of corporations known with different spellings and little differences. The United States of America. We were considered citizens of our states, landed citizens until the Civil War. Then things changed. They took that away from us. Somehow we have to find our way back. And it is a giant labyrinth, a huge puzzle. And as Woodrow Wilson said, there's a conspiracy that's so large no man dare speak against it. Above, no man speak against it aloud, lest he be heard. And they go after him. And as J. Edgar Hoover said, there's a conspiracy so vast, so big, that the average man can't even begin to wrap his head around it. Those 2 men knew what they were dealing with. I don't know if they have regrets. Woodrow Wilson said he was a very unhappy man because he had destroyed his nation. What do you think, folks? This is letter F, and it is the 24th of January, Tuesday, 2023. Yahweh bless you. May you start reading the Bible and bless Yahweh. May you yield your mind, your brain over to the foundation for our civilization so we can keep it going. and make it into the next millennia, into the next earth age. That's another story. Listen to my other shows. Tune back in. I'll give you more details. Over and out.